When silence and tears become prayer. My name is JJ, short for Jolanta Joanna. I'm 81 years old, a testament of a life that has been long, complex, and full of trials. Throughout my life, I've endured painful experiences, some so profound that they have left their mark on my body. I won't share every detail, because it's unnecessary. What matters is the strength and resilience I've learnt to find in pain. Amidst so much suffering, there was the first joy, even if only briefly, of having a child, a priceless gift from God. My testimony stems from the need to give voice to those who often remain silent, sensitive, shy, humble people who lack the courage or space to speak. I want to share just a few episodes because, despite the wounds, life can still find moments of light, and the truth, told with sincerity, can liberate those who listen and those who speak. This isn't just my story. It's also the story of those who, out of oversensitivity or fear of being hurt, always stay one step behind. I don't write these words to judge or inspire pity, but to remind people of the truth, so that those as vulnerable as I can feel less alone. I write because silence, at times, becomes a prison, and there are people, shy, sensitive, simple-hearted, who, like me, have experienced painful situations without finding a space to be heard. This testimony is for them too. I will share with you the last 7 years of my life, marked by profound challenges and pain, but also by small signs of rebirth. I do so not to judge or accuse, but to show that, even with life's deepest wounds, there is room for dignity, strength, and inner peace. After the loss of my beloved 5-year-old son, Jan, I felt the need to understand everything that had been hidden from me and to draw closer to God. So, I began studying theology. That study illuminated, step by step, many dark areas of my heart and mind, teaching me what it means to live as a true Christian, my second joy. From the moment I accepted my faith, I had the desire to serve the Lord and others wholeheartedly, according to biblical teachings, with a humble spirit, without a desire for profit, but as an act of love and gratitude. I've been a member of the community for 42 years. There were times when I wanted to leave, especially after the trauma I'm now describing. But my conscience reminded me that during my baptism I solemnly promised to remain faithful to the truth until the end, and the Holy Spirit urged me never to betray His church. I was happy I didn't. Today I belong to another group near my home. Years later, an acquaintance of mine, I will call Gra, asked me to translate into Italian a book by an extraordinary American writer, Ellen G. White. Obviously a Christian, a request I accepted with great joy. At first, I hesitated. I feared my English was no longer up to the task, having been at a standstill for some time, but my memory served me, and the work was completed with love and gratitude. It was a task called ministerial support, and for me ITW is both an honor and responsibility. Over time, that first book gave rise to about 30 more, a journey of sincere dedication, made up of long hours of work but also filled with great joy. It was silent, meticulous, and deeply meaningful work. When I realized that this task required good organization, I set up a full-fledged publishing office in my home where, in addition to the translations, the printing and binding of the books took place, all done by hand. At this point, I must add that I had been suffering from 2 incurable diseases for several years, the result of severe psychological and emotional trauma caused by others. However, I never gave up. The desire to live a dignified life in the service of God, and therefore also of others, was great. This condition forced me to live a careful and disciplined life, but it never took away my will to act. I did not give up. I did not sit or lie down to cry. I learnt to listen to my body and respect its limits whilst creating and writing, and also curating my channel, where today I share words of hope and faith. Let's begin with June 2018. After several years of waiting and quiet work, I was finally allowed to present 2 books I had translated, not only for myself but for the community. It was an important moment, and the presentation was supposed to be a small moment of celebration and sharing. I was only given about 10 minutes, while I was reading a short excerpt from the text. Jayam's voice, coming from the front of the pulpit, whispered, "Hurry up, hurry up." It was like receiving an electric shock. I felt a tingling sensation rising through my body and my heart pounding. I tried to continue and asked for the cover of the second book to be projected on the screen. No response. I waited a few moments. Time was passing quickly. Nothing. As if I hadn't spoken. So, I decided to continue without the cover. Shortly afterwards, a person with a leadership role in the community, whom I'll call Sally, approached me from behind and whispered, "Enough now. No one's listening." This phrase has been ostentatiously denied to this day. Her words left me speechless. Then, standing next to me, she added in a loud voice in front of everyone, "Everyone can go to the bookstore and look at these books." What was the point of being invited and then going through all this preparation, all this emotion? Just to hear, everyone can go to the bookstore to look at the books. Thus, my presentation ended abruptly, under the silent gaze of everyone present. I ran out into the street, shocked, and stood in front of my car, shaking, and cried every tear I could muster. At that moment, it wasn't just only humiliation, it was the collapse of something I had believed in with all my heart. In the days that followed, the wound transformed into an illness. I became seriously ill, requiring 10 weeks of therapy. Only later did I learn that my fault lay in having exceeded my allotted speaking time by a few minutes. One day, still hurt but lucid, I decided to write a few lines to about 15 people present that day, not to accuse, but to ask for a show of solidarity. No one responded. That same day, someone approached me silently, out of sight, to express their displeasure and disappointment. Yet, everyone had seen how that presentation had ended. September 2018. After the summer break, activities resumed. Following my letter, which I have already mentioned, I was called to a meeting. I shared this information with a pastor emeritus, a prominent figure with extraordinary virtue and dignity, who offered to assist me as a witness, saying, "If you are alone, they will destroy you." I accepted his help. Oh, how right he was. When we arrived at the meeting place, the pastor's presence immediately seemed to disturb the committee members, composed of about 10 people. His presence was rejected with senseless justifications. Despite his valid arguments, he was rudely dismissed. For the sake of peace, especially his own peace of mind. The pastor stood up and walked out with dignity and calmness. I should have followed him, but my legs felt paralyzed. I remained standing for about 2 hours, traumatized. The shocks began with Nico's dictum, delivered in an arrogant and domineering tone. I tried to resist, but the enemy force silenced me. One after another, they continued to fire more shocks at me. The most powerful came from Sally, the same one who had said, "Enough now." Of course, she never admitted it, covering it up with his usual eloquent dictum. "Your word against mine," as if the phrase had been invented by me, simply because no one had heard it. I was shaking all over and felt like I was about to faint. The jibes continued. One of them, recently arrived in our area, called Carmen, said with unprecedented audacity, "And to think we even helped you financially." At this point, I must clarify the following. A few months earlier, I was supposed to meet the manager in another city for a meeting. I replied that I was about to sell my car, 20 years old, due to the maintenance costs, which had increased significantly. Upon hearing this, the person called Matt, who had summoned me, gave orders the next day to send me a certain sum of money as assistance I never asked for. At first, I accepted it with gratitude and expressed my thanks. However, being aware of human nature, a month before the same meeting, I decided to repay the entire sum little by little. Because I knew that the good deed would be held against me, and it definitely happened. After all, 10 brothers had expressed their opinions, many of whom didn't even know me. The meeting concluded with a prayer. I couldn't participate due to the trauma I'd suffered. I felt truly devastated. I don't even remember how I managed to get to the car or how I got home, since the distance was over 50 kilometers. After the September meetings, between one incident and another, the lies and false testimonies didn't stop. For example, I learned from a reliable and trustworthy source that during one of their meetings, criticisms were made of my inadequate management of the bookstore, despite the fact that the entire assembly had expressed praise and great satisfaction over the years. In fact, the same person, Coolbet, who had been against my actions, took over the management of the bookstore. At another point, another lie was told about me. And I'll stop here. I don't want to fall back into the insane spiral of further lies and further discomfort. Immediately after the September meeting, I began to feel very ill. Severe headaches, inflammation of the trigeminal nerve, worsening of acute fibromyalgia with severe pain throughout my body. The fibromyalgia resulting from the trauma of losing my child, insomnia, severe neurodermatitis on my hands, the same disorder in a much milder form, were healing after long treatment lasting 30 years. To use my hands, whose palms of the hands bleed due to permanent wounds, I had to bandage them or wear 3 different types of gloves at once. After 7 years, the memories were still present, but the unspeakable mental suffering began to diminish. Praise be to God. Lately, I've even been able to fall asleep without sleeping pills. Sometimes I can even smile. After finding out that the books I translated had been banned, I didn't give up. I prayed intensely for guidance and strength to continue serving the Lord in some way, and the answer came. Don't worry. Continue sending my messages into the world by creating a channel. Imagine that, me, at my age, with all my health issues, being called to create an online channel. But I did it. Obviously not as professional, but as amateur one. The desire to continue serving the Lord and my neighbors prevailed. I'm always looking for suitable animated videos to accompany written or spoken text, depending on the format. The investigation and disappointment. At my first hospital visit, while I was already receiving my preliminary infusion, the attending physician sat down beside the bed where I was lying and asked me what had happened and what pain I was suffering from. I explained to him what was necessary and indispensable. Seeing my pain, he said, "Fortunately, it's not a stroke, but a severe headache. I advise you, madam, to stay away from this group because these people are toxic to you." Later, after following more specific tests, it was determined that I was still at risk of a stroke. I followed the doctor's advice, and later I began attending another group. Shortly after my admission, During the years between 2018 and 2023, I was hospitalized 5 times. Someone heard about my situation in the hospital. A 3-person commission was then established to investigate the events. The commission was headed by a psychologist called Luti, a man of great balance and sensitivity, at least it seemed at first, who listened attentively and without judgment. He supported me as much as possible, and despite my great exhaustion and pain, I tried to answer clearly. Later, when I asked if they believed what I had said, all 3 of them confirmed that they believed my words. Acknowledging my sincerity and my precarious physical and psychological condition, consequences of the trauma suffered. Unfortunately, later, one of them, precisamente lo stesso Luti, changed his story and turned his back on me. But what was the reason for this gesture? I've been told that in such cases, colleagues who do the same job cover for each other, unfortunately at the expense of others' suffering. One day, I took the initiative and asked for a meeting for reconciliation. And when I was finally given the floor, and as soon as I began to speak, I was immediately silenced because my version, though truthful, was not appreciated. Obviously, the reconciliation failed. Subsequently, the psychologist wrote me a letter, which I honestly didn't read. Because from just one sentence at the bottom of it I understood that he was asking me for an apology on behalf of the others, as if I, and not anyone else, was the one to blame. This dictum shocked me. Truth and forgiveness. Some of you may ask me, do you have proof of what you say? Even if I did, the answer would still be the same, your word against ours. Today, only my word exists, and that of those who believed me, the pure truth. However, the truth, in every detail, will be revealed on the day when the books of heaven are opened for the final judgment. Knowing this, and despite the suffering, I have felt calmer from that moment on. Yet, something was still missing, my forgiveness. The scriptures teach us that forgiveness is essential, especially for mental health and for regaining inner peace. Since I could no longer do it in person, both due to distance and avoiding eye contact, I decided to do it in writing. And so, I wrote a letter in which I forgave each of them. Unfortunately, their reaction was terrible because of a phrase from the scriptures that they didn't understand or didn't want to understand. Yet, my intent was explained very precisely. Before concluding, I'd like to share a few more thoughts. I've never harbored hatred in my mind, not just in this case, but throughout my life. However, I do not condone wrongdoing. Since I was a child, I wasn't allowed to speak up, justify myself, or defend myself. Everything I held back remained deep within my soul, causing serious trauma. I'm aware that I am not perfect. No one is. We all carry the seeds of sin. Knowing this, I do everything I can to improve my character, strengthen my weaknesses, and eliminate those that undermine my dignity. I respect every person regardless of their circumstances, and I seek the same respect from others, even if, unfortunately, many don't know it. If I unintentionally cause discomfort to someone, I try to make amends and apologize immediately. Lies hurt me deeply because they have serious health consequences. Every lie is covered up by 100 others, but eventually, they will be discovered. Since accepting Christianity, I have not resorted to such subterfuge, knowing that sooner or later it will backfire. My theological studies continue because they help me know myself better, understand what I need to improve and what to eradicate from my life. For years, I struggled to understand why those who claim to be Christians, especially preachers, cannot distinguish good from evil and do not admit their mistakes, and, worse, never apologize. However, the answer was soon revealed to me through the Holy Scriptures. Today, I try to live in peace, serenity, and by maintaining an inner balance, everything that characterizes my Savior and Master, Jesus Christ. I am aware of my weaknesses, my sensitivities, and my emotions. I know what I need to improve and change, and the Lord is already working in me through constant prayer. He continues to urge me not to become discouraged. But there is even more. He helped me even more with his promises, saying, "You are not worse than others. And there is no reason for you to feel diminished. You are the apple of my eye. You have suffered enough, and it is time to change your attitude. Continue to use the gift I have given you. Let others think what they will. Move forward with your head held high, live your life and your faith. Vengeance belongs to me. Forgive them everything, and that is what I have done. Especially for myself, so as not to live with resentment in my soul. Learn to love them just as they are. I will take care of everything else. Keep your faith. Whatever you need, I am there. Always ready to help you. Just trust in me." And again Jesus said, "During your 81 years you have been beaten, you have suffered violence, hunger, and insomnia. You have always behaved with honesty, wisdom, great patience, and kindness. Gifts of the Holy Spirit. In your defense, you have only one weapon: to live as I please. Some respect you, many despise you. Some speak well of you, many badly. Telling the truth is your virtue. Yet some, to cover up their lies, call you a liar. You continue to be treated like an outsider. You have been punished, tormented. Yet you try to be serene. You possess nothing, yet you are rich. Your service to me has been criticized, yet you have always behaved correctly. When you have managed to speak frankly with someone, you have done so out of love and for that person's good. The majority have closed their hearts, but you, by receiving the light and the truth, seek to let it shine before others so that they may glorify my name." And again Jesus said, "No matter how much these things may hurt you, remember, I, before you, suffered unspeakable things. I carried the cross to the point of death. With my help, you too will endure. Whenever your suffering intensifies, come seek me, speak to me, confide only in me and not in men. The trials will not cease, and you will not be able to endure them alone. I am always available, but you must trust only in me." My victory. When I feel forgotten, neglected, or intentionally left aside, I manage to smile inwardly and glorify God despite the insults received. This is my victory. When I do good yet am spoken of badly, when my wishes do not come true, when my attitudes are criticized, my advice ignored, my opinions ridiculed, I endure it all in silence and with loving patience. This is my victory. By being content with what I eat, with what I wear, enduring every discord, irregularity, unpredictability, and annoyance. Enduring the spiritual or moral insensitivity of others, as Jesus did. This is my victory. Not listening to or spreading gossip. Not seeking praise for my works. Not seeking love for myself. This is my victory. When I experience the humility of the cross, God can use me for the glory of his cause. For then Christ, and Christ alone, is glorified in me. May the Lord be glorified. Dear friends, thank you for listening to me to the end. If there is anyone among you who is going through a difficult time, someone who is suffering for various reasons, do not despair. Go to the foot of the cross and share your burdens with Jesus. He himself exhorts us, saying, "Come to me, all you who labor and are burdened, and I will give you rest." Matthew chapter 11, 28. May the Lord bless you all abundantly.